Gina DeLugo-Keski. I own Seed Sower Farm LLC. It's a very small organic operation where I grow organic transplants every year. I'm also a seed librarian at Glen Cove Public Library. I developed this program as part of that library so that I could teach people about the beauty of growing your own garlic. And if anybody's ever grown their own garlic or tasted some homegrown garlic, you're going to understand why I'm an adherent to it. There will not be a year that goes by when I won't grow it because it is superior to anything you'll get at the grocery store. So today we're going to talk about the history, a little bit of its history, a little bit of the medicinal qualities of garlic, and how to plant, grow it, and cure it. So we're really now at the very beginning stage of the time where you can start planting your garlic. I understand most of you have garlic to plant, and so this I hopefully will illuminate how that goes. It is an extremely easy plant to grow. It's the only drawback is that it does take up some space. You plant it around now and you won't harvest it till July, but it's well worth the wait. And okay, so without any further ado, first I'd like to say thank you to Middle Country Public Library, to Amber, and for inviting me back to teach this class. It's a real pleasure to get people to grow their own garlic, and I hope you will get a lot out of the program tonight. Okay. So it's really garlic is amongst the oldest known horticultural crops. There's evidence of it being in Indian cultures almost 5,000 years ago. It's 4,500 years ago, the Babylonians used it, and Chinese started using it around 2,000 years ago. At least that's the evidence that they have found. Garlic itself only grows wild in Central Asia. So all of these countries, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. So it's not native to Long Island or to the United States or even to Europe. It's really Central Asia that it was originated. And as with most things that have withstood the test of time and have been brought forward from year to year for all of these, eons, there's usually some benefits to it. And that's why we still have it here today. So I'll talk about the different types of garlic, but soft neck garlic, which is this variety, it's a type of garlic that has a very soft neck. This was the predominant type of garlic grown. And only in about the last 1,000 years was there a little bit of a distinction between the soft neck type and the hard neck. Okay, and you can see I cannot bend that, so that's why they call it a hard neck. The benefits to both, it's just a decision that you would make on your own personally. And actually the garlic that you picked up from Amber is actually a hard neck variety, and I'll talk about all the benefits to the hard necks in a few minutes. So most of the garlic was cultivated in Europe about 1,000 years ago, and most of it didn't come here till like the 1970s, and that came with Polish, German, and Italian immigrants. And it came in like the 70s. Anything that came in about that time. And here's a little map so you can kind of get a sense of where those countries are. As I said before, most of the time when some kind of a plant is cultivated for centuries on end, there's usually a benefit to it. And in this case, there are many health benefits to garlic. And, some of these studies that are out there are maybe trying to push a certain supplement, and maybe it's a little biased, but these particular benefits that I have listed here are actually backed up by mostly National Institute of Health research papers. And if we were in a physical environment today, I would be able to hand you that handout, which would show the different resources that they're referring to. So the most beneficial thing, one of the benefits of garlic, the sulfur compounds that are formed when it's crushed or chewed or chopped. And actually it's better to, if you want the maximum amount of those antifungal and antibacterial benefits, is you would chop it and then wait about 10 minutes. That's when it's at its peak. There's another compound that garlic possesses, and that's called allicin. And that's only around for a little bit after you crush it or chop it. but it's shown to show, allicin has been found to show a lot of these benefits that I have listed here. It's lipid lowering, it's anti-blood, it's anticoagulation properties. It's helpful with hypertension, supposedly anti-cancer properties, antioxidant and antimicrobial effects. So if we're all worried about this virus that's going around, it would be a good thing to take some garlic if you can. So you can use garlic many ways. This little graphic shows that you can season your favorite foods. This is how we normally take it. There are capsules out there that have a very high level of allicin in it. I guess they must isolate it some way so that it doesn't get destroyed in the process of processing it. You can eat it raw, and you can apply it to your skin as an antiseptic. So forget about the Clorox wipes. Right now, we can use garlic if you're so desperate. And I understand Clorox wipes are still hard to find. So you can see some of the vitamins that are associated with the head of garlic, and it repeats some of those things I've just said on the left. So ancient civilizations used garlic to treat things like asthma, digestive disorders, heart disease, respiratory disorders, tumors, and even intestinal worms. And actually, there is some evidence that garlic, some cultures use garlic to take worms out of dogs and animals, but I don't really have anything more but that anecdotal thing to say. Or these health benefits include lowering blood pressure and cholesterol. It has that anti-inflammatory effect, and inflammation is really the breeding ground for cancer. So in effect, it does reduce your risk of cancer if it's anti-inflammatory, and it helps build your immune system. And as I mentioned before, if you chop it up about 10 or 15 minutes before cooking, you'll get the benefits. So that's what you want to do. If you have the time, let it sit for a little bit, and you'll get the maximum benefits of healthful benefits from that garlic. These are even more benefits. And as I said before, usually traditional medicine that's been carried forward and we have in our foods there's usually a good reason why. So garlic belongs to this species called Allium sativum. There are two varieties, the subspecies of the soft neck and the hard neck, and I'll show you those again. This is the soft neck, and it's called soft neck because the neck on it is very soft. You can see it's very pliable. Hard neck varieties have this hard neck. So soft neck varieties include these silver skin and artichoke types. And what's an artichoke type? This would be an artichoke type. If you can kind of see how this one is kind of breaking open, it's almost like an artichoke in that there are all these different scales that go from large to smaller in the center. And they all have different properties in terms of flavor. I've never done a real taste test. I was hoping to do that this past spring, but then we got closed down. But maybe next year I'll be able to do that. So the silver skin and artichoke types that we have here would be including Inchellium red, which is a great keeper. So if you're ever looking to do a soft neck type, I highly recommend that variety. This is the one that's most often found in supermarkets, the soft necks, because it can be planted mechanically, whereas hard necks are not, and probably the harvesting as well also mechanical, so they don't need a human hand to plant and harvest it. It's got a long shelf life and a mild flavor, and if you're handy and you have the patience, you can braid it, which is something I've never really attempted. But maybe this year. I have a lot of soft neck that I grew this year that's really ready to be braided, and I might do that this year. But it's really a nice variety to grow for these reasons. The hard neck variety is going to fall into these other distinct varietal groups. So there'll be porcelain types, which I believe is what the music variety is that you have. Purple stripe, so they have a little bit of glazed marbling, and that picture we just saw is looking like that's sort of what a hard neck would also look like if it was a purple stripe type, and a rocan bowl. Rocan bowls, I think, are the most spiciest of the garlics. Hard neck garlic has something called a garlic scape, which is actually a flowering stalk. At the very top of this, you see where it kind of tapers off at the top, it curls, and then it tapers off at the top. If left on the plant, that whole stem would start to stand up straight, and that top part would start to enlarge and would become pollinated, and then you could actually harvest garlic seed off of there. We tend to pop it off. Farmers tend to pop that whole scape off just right where that person's middle finger is, right at the base of that scape, because for a couple of reasons. First, it's a delicious ephemeral treat that you're only going to get once a year. It can be used as garlic, and if you really are like me and your life goal is never to buy garlic ever from the store, this is a way to get you from your crop that you grew that maybe you're running out of to the next crop that's going to be harvested in July. If you decided to let it get pollinated and become a seed head, what happens is it takes the energy from the bulb to do that, because all seed heads take energy from a plant. It's like having a baby, you know, it's going to take energy from the mother plant or the mother person to develop a fully formed seed or a baby or whatever. So we pop it off so that the head, so that the cloves, the bulbs at the bottom of the plant will remain large. If you did let it go to seed though, you could harvest that seed, and if you had plenty of time and space, you could grow it out for about 3 or 4 years before it become looking like a normal size head of garlic. Otherwise, it's going to take a long time. You're going to get very, very, very small heads, and you're going to have to let it just keep developing over time. So there's great benefits to both. Soft neck varieties have a nice long storage life. They have a milder flavor, and as I mentioned before, they're decorative. You can braid them. So if you're of the ilk to give homemade gifts at Christmas, I don't know any cook, any home cook that would be less than thrilled with a beautiful braid of garlic. You can also harvest this as green garlic. So there's that benefit as well. Hard neck varieties also provide multiple opportunities for harvesting. As I mentioned, with the soft neck, there's the green garlic, and green garlic is what you're looking at here in this image. It's basically garlic that hasn't quite gotten to the point where the cloves have differentiated. The bulb will swell. It's got great flavor. This is pretty popular in some Slavic countries and cultures, and it's a big thing in the spring because it is about the size when you're getting to like April, May. You can pull your green garlic. You'll see it coming up, and you can pull it then and you use it. The garlic scapes, as I mentioned before on the hard neck, is a really nice thing to have. And garlic scapes are great because you can chop them up and freeze them, and they can get you, over that hump of not having your own garlic. They're very, very mild once they're cooked. They're pretty pungent when they're raw, but they're really, really delicious. And then, of course, your third opportunity for either of these types of varieties would be the mature garlic itself, which you're going to harvest around July. So garlic scapes will come out around June. Green garlic is basically available to you the minute the plant starts to really grow and becomes sized up on any level. So you're looking for maybe a dime-sized stem or larger, and if you pull that garlic up, what you'll see is an enlarged bulb, but it will not have differentiated cloves, so you will not be able to see the individual cloves on that garlic head, because the plant hasn't yet had the opportunity to absorb all the photosynthesis it needs to put it down into the bulb to make a mature bulb. Hard neck also has good storage life and a fuller flavor. So when to plant? So you're going to plant your garlic right around now. Some people planted it earlier. I am not a fan. It's sort of like this Goldilocks situation. You don't want to plant it too early. You don't want to plant it too late. And the reason why is if you plant it too early, that plant is going to set roots into the ground and start to make some green growth. Well, that green growth is what's going to get your plant to become a bulb, so that you're going to harvest in July. So we live in zone 7 in New York State, and we get cold winters, and that green growth may get wiped out by a cold snap. Once that green growth is gone, there's no way you're going to get garlic off of the plant. So planting it too early, you might have the risk of that. I've seen people plant it very early and they never have a problem, but why take the risk? Mid-October is around the time you'd want to plant it because it's getting cooler, the plant is going to start to set roots down, but it's not going to actually start to send up too much green growth. It will send up green growth, but it'll be enough to overwinter. It's hardy enough. It's like a tulip. Like if you've ever seen in February, March, if we've had a couple of mild days, a tulip or a daffodil bulb, you might start to see it coming up and it's green and you're thinking, oh no, it's too cold still. It has the ability to withstand some cold as a smaller plant. So, and my drop dead date is always the 1st of December. That's probably too late. My goal this year is to really get in the ground before the beginning of November. How to plant? You're going to plant it, you're going to take your garlic. If you're buying heads of garlic, and I'll talk about where you should buy it. You don't want to get it from the grocery store or get it from a friend that you don't know. You're going to take this clove of garlic, 1 clove, and you're going to plant it with the flat side down and the pointed side up at about 4 to 6 inches apart in a depth of about 2 inches. You also have a handout that Amber shared with you. I believe that handout talks about 4 inches deep. That's planting instructions for Maine. I mean, it doesn't hurt to go a little deeper, but you don't have to go as deep as 4 inches on Long Island because we're warmer than Maine. Okay, where to plant? You want full sun, well-drained, rich soil. You don't want soggy soil. You want soil that you've amended to some degree with some compost, because that compost is going to be the slow growth that the garlic will need to get started. And then the actual photosynthesis process will help it continue to build its reserves and make a nice, good-sized bulb. So if you have a lot of space and not much garlic, you can plant it 6 inches apart because the capacity of the soil to give that plant nutrients will be greater, right? It's a square foot gardening kind of technique, but if you plant them closer, there's more competition for those nutrients and moisture in the soil, so you might get smaller heads. So if you've got the room, plant them further apart, you're going to get bigger heads, and everyone knows it's easier to peel and chop large cloves off of a large head of garlic than tiny little cloves. So full sun, well-drained, rich soil. You want to amend it by adding some compost. Now I do have a little video here. I'm hoping it's going to play okay for you, and hopefully the sound is good. This is just a quick little 2-minute video of how to plant it. Shows you how easy it is to grow, and let's give it a shot. See if it'll work.
If you're who's been settling for the same old store-bought commercial cloves, then you have no idea what you're missing. There's a whole world of exotic garlics ready for you to grow right at home in your garden. You can certainly plant your garden.
Regina, we're not seeing the video.
You'll get
No,
larger
you
cloves,
may have to share your
overall better
video,
results
just share screen and then go to the video part.
in the fall.
Okay, let me
I'm
stop.
only seeing your PowerPoint.
I'm sorry.
We don't see the video, we only hear it.
Oh, okay. Oh, I have to share it again. I have to unshare and reshare. Is that what you're saying? Got it. Let me do that. So I'm going to share this video.
Yeah, do share and then find the actual video. And that should work.
Okay. Yeah, it's different, right? Let me go back. Now you probably see it, correct?
Yes, we
If you're
can.
a garlic lover who's been settling for the same old
Can you hear it?
Yes.
Great, perfect.
store-bought commercial cloves, then you have no idea what you're missing. There's a whole world of exotic garlics ready for you to grow right at home in your garden. You can certainly plant your garlic in the spring, but in many areas, you'll get larger cloves, healthier plants, and overall better results if you plant these cold, hardy root vegetables in the fall. One of the best benefits of fall planted garlic is that it starts the growth process that will be completed the following summer. Garlic is very hardy, and many varieties just won't perform well unless they're subjected to harsh winter weather conditions. We plant fall garlic so that the cloves have plenty of time to establish good rooting before the freezing weather conditions set in. Don't worry if your garlic develops a little green growth before winter sets in. They'll be just fine. A well-established root system will help your garlic to jump out of the ground at the first signs of spring. Now let's show you how to plant your garlic. The bulbs that we'll be using over here today were produced specifically for home garden use. Garlic bulbs are made up of many different cloves. When you receive your garlic, you'll want to leave this intact until you're ready to plant it out in the garden. When you're ready to plant, be sure to remove the papery outer covering called the tunic. Each clove will form an entirely new bulb of garlic. Make sure that you start with rich, pliable soil that you've worked plenty of compost into. Dig individual holes or trenches to a depth of about 3 to 4 inches. You should plant the cloves about 6 inches apart. Make sure that you properly orient your cloves in the planting hole. The flat bottom faces downwards and the tapered tip points to the sky. A great tool to make planting easier is what I've been using here. It's called a dibbler. Cover with soil. I always like to add a bit of mulch to help control temperature swings and prevent soil drying. That's all you have to do. Just sit back, wait for spring to come, and watch your garlic start to sprout.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to make sure you understand when she says the papery tunic, what is she talking about is this outer covering here. You do not have to peel each of the cloves. If you put this in the ground like this with the paper on there, on this piece, it's fine. It's going to just decompose. Add a little organic matter into the soil. You don't have to peel the whole clove because believe me, that would be very time consuming. It's just this outer covering. Try to orient this a little better. Let's see, how can I show you? It's this piece of paper that's holding these cloves together along the stem of this neck.
In this project diary, I'll show you how to grow garlic cloves in containers.
That's the bad thing about this.
So once you've got your leftover garlic, I'm going to show you a really quick way on to make sure that it's germinating
there's lots
correctly.
of stuff out there on how to grow garlic. So if you didn't catch that last one, okay. Back to this. Okay, let's go back to present the current slide. Okay, so it's really simple. So simple. It's unbelievably simple. And really, it's set it and forget it. The only thing you need to make sure is that you don't let weeds kind of multiply in your garden bed. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So you want to keep it weed free. That is your best bet. And you can see here on the right-hand side, these plants have been mulched with leaves. Leaves are terrific, terrific. And I can't emphasize this enough. Resource for you. We cart them out to the curb every year and they take them away and God knows what happens to them. But they're really a great resource for your garden. Chopped up leaves would be very good to have if you have them. Avoid using things that mat like maple leaves. The point is that you don't want your garlic to be overrun by weeds. And you know, garlic is, you can see how it's growing here. It's just starting that beginning growth. It doesn't throw a lot of canopy. It doesn't throw a lot of shade. So weed seeds are easily grow underneath and between those plants. And then you're going to be, it'll compete for the energy, the resources that your plant needs to grow very large. Straws are a very good resource too. Maybe your neighbors are going to throw out some straw in a couple of weeks after Halloween or Thanksgiving. It's always great to grab. Just make sure it's straw. So there's a difference between straw and hay. Straw is actually the shaft of a cereal plant. So things like barley, wheat, rye. There are no seeds or very few seeds in the straw. If there are any, they're very easy to pull up. Hay, on the other hand, is a grass, and it's actually going to have hay seeds on it, and that will cause a big problem for you in terms of weeding. So make sure if you pick up straw, it looks like a straw. It's hollow on the inside. It's fairly thick. You know what straw looks like. Don't mistake it for hay. I mean, don't get hay and it's straw. You can use a wheat cloth, but make sure it lets moisture fall through. comes through. You don't want to use plastic. Plastic is never a good idea in the garden. It might keep your life simpler, but it doesn't do a whole lot of good for the soil organisms that reside in the soil that help cycle nutrients, etc. And so soil organisms really need moisture to thrive. I like to mulch after the soil has frozen because, you know, we wind up with a freeze. Some you know, it depends on the time of year. Maybe it might be in mid-December, might be towards the end of December. I always feel like it's super cold right after Christmas, right after those holidays, and New Year's Day, that kind of thing. You want to mulch then, because what will happen is the mulch actually tempers the soil temperature. So if you mulch it too soon and you keep it warm and then everything gets very cold, those plants will heave, and then you'll go back to your garden and find all your garlic cloves are out of the ground. So you want to wait until the soil has frozen solid, and then you can go ahead and mulch. And I really, really highly recommend you use leaves. And leaves are great just generally for mulching in the garden, period. So what's happening when? So when you plant your garlic, after a few weeks, it starts to develop these roots. These roots are really important for the plant to be able to pull moisture out of the soil, because you're not going to be watering your garlic in the winter. Any residual moisture that's in the soil, the plants will be pulling out of the soil. They're really adapted to do that. It's also going to give that plant a good solid footing so that come the spring, it's going to start to grow very quickly. In early winter, late winter, there'll be some little top growth like I just showed you in that last picture, and that's fine. You don't want a ton of it. You don't want a lot of it, because as I said before, if you get a cold snap, that green growth could potentially be wiped out, and then you have no mechanism for the plant to be able to absorb, photosynthesize and absorb nutrients from the sun, and to develop that bulb. So comes late winter, early spring, you'll start to see the plants will start to grow kind of slowly, and that's great. And then in early spring, late spring, the plant really starts to take off. And garlic looks a lot like a lily bulb or like a daylily in terms of the way it looks, and I have images of it for you to see. In late spring, early summer, this is when you can start harvesting your green garlic. So, you know, like mid-April, May is a good time to, if you want to use the green garlic, that's a good time to grab it. Green garlic is sometimes always in your garlic to harvest, in your garden to harvest, because what often happens if people wait too long to harvest their garlic, they pull up the neck and the bulb stays behind, and it's really hard to get those out of the ground, and just leave them. Next year when that grows again, you can pull it out and use it as garlic in your kitchen in the late spring. Of course, the garlic scapes are also something you would harvest, and you want to harvest it in early summer, and that happens around June. It's usually the first week of June is when I see the garlic scapes, and what you're looking to do when you harvest the garlic scapes is you want to make sure that they're still curled. If they start to straighten up like this, and they will, like, so I did actually harvest the scape off of this. You can't really see it because it's probably already shriveled down to nothingness. But this scape, well, no, see, the garlic scape will actually start to look like this. The scape is gone, and if I had left it, it would con straight up and then become a flower, and I think I have an image of that. If I haven't already shown you one, I'll show you another one. At the end of June, you want to pull up a bulb or two and see kind of if you have a lot of garlic. I know you guys only have 2 cloves, so maybe you want to wait to see if they're forming normally. And then around July 4th, that's usually when I harvest my garlic. And what you're going to look for is the bottom 3 leaves of all the leaves that are on here. And this was all green growth at one point, and it was all strappy, like I said. The bottom 3 leaves will have died back. That's the time to pull it. You don't want to wait till it gets to this point, because if I went to go pull this out of the ground once it all went brown, that root system is still pretty solid in the ground, and I go to pull it up and it won't come out. This will break off, and then I'm stuck with garlic in the ground that I can't really grab. And you could go and burrow around it and grab it, but it's not going to cure properly, because this is all part of the curing process, keeping this long stem on. So there's only a few things that you really need to worry about with garlic. It's pretty disease-free, but there are 3 big problems with garlic, and this is what happens when you don't, if you're not careful and you don't buy garlic that's certified disease-free, you could introduce this into your soil. So white rot is one of them. I tend to have a problem with white rot almost every year in my garden. I'm not sure if I introduced it at one point or it had been introduced in the past and I resurrected it by planting garlic in my garden at the community garden. But it's basically spreads by seed and soil. And it will actually spread into other fields if you throw debris there, because I don't know how it lives on this plant, but it does live there, and it will sit there in a suspended animation until it finds the right host to attack. So what happens is earlier in the season, now the normal yellowing of the bottom leaves is great in the end of June into July. That's the normal senescence of the plant. But if you see this happening at the beginning of June or May, you have a problem. And if you pulled it up, you'll see what the problem is. It's basically a black kind of sclerotia, and then it becomes this white fungus on the bulb underneath the soil. And this is what it looks like. And it's very, very sad. And there you can see those leaves are starting to wither, and that's probably not normal senescence of the plants. And this is basically what happens. The root system looks a little disheveled, like it's not really healthy, and it's getting attacked by bacteria, which bacteria and fungal. So it's funny, garlic is antifungal for us, but I don't know that it's antifungal for itself when it's got this host, when it's got this kind of problem with this disease. So white rot of garlic, you want to make sure your garlic has been checked and certified free of it. Another disease is this garlic bloat nematode. Now, garlic bloat nematode has a similar look. You can see it's got that yellowing, but this is a very small microscopic insect that will basically eat out the bottom part of your garlic. So this has been cut off, but this is the bottom of the garlic. These were beautiful roots at one time. This will all have been kind of decomposed. It will all be gone. There won't be any root system on there. Garlic bloat nematode is something that's a really big problem that you absolutely want to make sure your garlic is been certified free of, because garlic bloat nematode can live in the soil for eons and you will never be able to plant garlic there. And you might think, well, I'll wait a few years and I'll put something else in there. There are host plants out there that it will actually thrive on. It's microscopic, you're not going to see it. And it's even possible that you'll have them and you won't know for a few years, which is why you don't really want to save your garlic unless you're absolutely sure you don't have this problem. But sometimes these things build up in the soil. The final thing is Petritis, and this is what Petritis looks like. It's really one of these things that happens in cool, wet conditions. And guess what? In the spring, we usually have cool, wet conditions. Over irrigation, excessive fertilization, and it's more common in heavy soils. Now, you guys, I think, are kind of like mid part of the island, so you're probably not dealing with super heavy soils. I know up here I deal with it. So it's a fungus, of course, and it affects the plant, neck tissues, and then it's just done. You're not going to get a garlic off of this plant. There's no way. So the best way to prevent that from happening is to always buy certified disease-free seed. And so that's why you don't really want to go to the grocery store and say, oh, my garlic is starting to sprout, I'll plant it. We have no idea whether that garlic has any kind of an issue, because these things are microscopic and they can sit dormant until you plant them in your garden. There are two types of garlic out there. There's garlic seed, which is meant for planting, and then there's table stock. Table stock can be simply because they're smaller heads of garlic, and they won't sell them as seed garlic because we're looking for the biggest cloves possible, so we get the most growth out of that bulb, that's the energy storage packet for that plant to start growing. Or it's got a problem, but because you're not, like the garlic bloat nematode, it's microscopic, you'll never know it's there, it's not going to harm us to eat it, but it can't be sold as seed because it's got a problem, and it is really a devastating disease. So do not, I don't know how many times to say this, do not ever plant any seed given to you by a friend unless you know for a fact that they got from a reputable source that said it was disease-free, or from the supermarket. The other reason you don't want to plant garlic from the supermarket is most of that garlic's grown in California. Well, California is like zone 11. They don't get cold winters. Some garlic doesn't like a cold winter. I mean, we happen to have varieties here that we grow on the East Coast that are really suitable to our climate. Some of the garlic comes from other parts of the world, and it may not be growing in those conditions. So you don't want to go through the trouble of planting a big field of garlic or a nice big bed, get very excited, and then winter comes and it gets fried from the cold because it can't withstand that cold temperature. So the other thing you can do is just understand the cycle of disease and use cultural practices to reduce it. When I say cultural practices, I would say make sure you don't overwater. Like nature does a lot of watering in the spring, and that's probably plenty of water for the garlic. These plants are evolved to be able to maximize soil moisture. You'd be surprised what feels dry to us is probably enough moisture for that plant. So I would limit my additional moisture. I would probably not water. I don't water, and that's somehow I get around this white rot problem of mine. I make a real effort not to water my garlic, let nature do the watering, and I usually wind up with something of a crop, but I always wind up with a diminished harvest because of that white rot. So understand if it looks like it's yellowing in June, you want to yank that thing up, get it out of the ground, because it may be kind of isolated to that one plant or that one bulb, and maybe it won't spread. Maybe you'll get lucky. Okay, so you can mail order garlic. Every year, garlic becomes more and more popular. I've been growing garlic for about 15 years, and there was a time when I could order garlic in September and be able to get anything I want. Now I have to order in July. And in this particular year, I order from the Maine Potato Lady. We do a garlic group order at Glencoe Public Library. We get a phenomenal price because we buy a lot of garlic, and we're able to offer it to the members at cost of the library. And this year, my order was in, everything was cool. I was feeling really proud of myself, thought I beat the crowd. Turns out the Maine Potato Lady does get certified seed, but she buys it from other growers. So what happens is she got shorted. She got shorted on her red variety, her soft neck variety in Chilean red, and had to cut my order in half, which was a bit of a problem. So order early because every year it gets more and more popular. Now this year, and I'm really thrilled to say this, we have a farm on Long Island. It's called Restoration Farm. It's at Bethpage Restoration Village. It's on, what road is that? It's on Spagnoli Road. They have a CSA, they're organic growers, they're really lovely people. This year, Caroline, who's the farmer there, decided she was gonna really do this garlic thing right. And she is selling it now. She's got it certified disease-free of all those 3 problems. And that's the garlic you guys got, actually. You got the music garlic from her, because I bought some garlic from her, and we supplied it to the library to supply to you. So Restoration Farm, there's their website. I highly recommend you check them out. They're lovely people. They know what they're doing. They're not certified organic, but they're doing all organic practices. I know them for many, many years, and they're doing it all right. And this is fabulous that we have a local option now, as opposed to trying to like scour the internet to try to find something and pay shipping. You know, a pound of garlic, if you want to go out and buy a pound of garlic online now, it's going to probably cost you like $30. If the garlic itself will cost you about $20, and then they'll charge you $8 or $9 for shipping. So when you harvest the garlic, it's going to look like this. See how those leaves are kind of yellowing? To the left of this gentleman is what the garlic looks like when it's not quite ready. And garlic does have different maturity dates, but generally speaking, I'm going to say mid-July is when you want to grab it. And as I said before, you can harvest garlic several times. You can get that green garlic, which can either be a soft neck or a hard neck. On the hard necks, which is the variety you have it's called Music, and it's a really, really popular variety. So I'm really thrilled to be able to get that. You can pop off that Scape, and that's a great source of garlic. And then of course in early to mid-July is the garlic. Now, it's a good idea to loosen the soil before you go to pull it up. You want to kind of make sure you're far away from the bulb so you don't damage it. with the fork. And you can use a hand fork. You don't need to use a broad fork or a long handled fork like this. Generally speaking, you'll be able to pick up that garlic with just a little bit of loosening of the soil. So here's that green garlic I was telling you about. Here are the garlic scapes. Now, in this particular image, you can see how that top bulb is starting to swell, and you can see how the scape is straightened out. To the bottom part of the screen on the bottom right, you see some still curly. That's the stage at which you'd want to harvest that, because as it straightens out, it gets more and more woody, and then it's going to be impossible to eat. It's going to be too stringy, and it will not be pleasant. You will not be able to cook it enough to make it so that it's edible, because the plant now is heading towards making a seed head, and that's kind of the point, you know. The point isn't for us to get garlic. The point is for the garlic to get its seed out there so it can perpetuate its progeny, right? So that's what garlic looks like, a garlic scape, and that one's heading to seed head stage. And then here's the garlic. Now look at this garlic. How beautiful is this? It's huge. Look at the root system on that. So when you harvest it, a root system like that is going to definitely require you to loosen the soil. So as I said, you would put your garlic, you put your fork a couple of inches away from where the garlic is to loosen the soil. Just give it a little bit of a lift. Try to do it when it's dry out. So, you know, we have summer rains, and maybe it's July 4th, July 5th, and tomorrow it's going to pour. Get out there and harvest your garlic. It'll be cleaner. It'll be easier to deal with. So when you get the garlic out of the ground, it is still going to have some soil on it. And what you're going to just do is you're going to very carefully just kind of tap the bulb in your hand. These are like eggs. You don't want to damage them. You don't want to bruise them, because if you do that, that's going to mitigate its ability to cure properly and hold well. If you stab it with a fork, the same thing. The damage to that will now cause it to start to rot. If you have any imperfect heads, I would use them first. So maybe this is a little discolored. Like this particular head was already kind of coming apart. So I would eat this first. I wouldn't store this. I would try to use the ones that aren't so perfect first. And, you know, cut off whatever doesn't look good. It's probably all fine to eat. Remember to take it out in July, because as I said before, people leave it too long in mid-July, like beginning first weeks, maybe second week. If you leave it too long and you go to pull that plant up and it breaks apart in the ground, it's going to be hard to pull it out and cure for the future. Place it in a cool, dry, shaded place. So you don't want to put it in the sun. These are not onions. Onions love to be left in the sun. It's such a joy to dry onions because you don't need to worry about a shelter. You don't need to worry about where you're putting it. You really want to hang it or dry it on a rack with good airflow out of the sun. That's the way to go. And what'll happen is that green plant, you saw that prior, right? So you can see how green that stem is. This plant is going to be green like this. You're going to let this dry down to this stage. This is really what you want. I want it to be crumbly. Why? Well, if I go to cut this immediately, this is still moist in the neck, right? If you ever got fresh garlic out of the ground, and you can certainly eat it then, but don't expect to store it. If you cut that off, you're opening up an opportunity for bacteria to get in there and start to worm its way into your garlic and decompose it. So you want to dry it really, really, really dry. So having said that, you need to identify a space that you can do this in. Don't do what I did and grow 750 heads of garlic. And then you walked around my house that year and there was no place, there was no garlic. It was crazy. And now I can't even have garlic in the house because I have a cat who loves to eat it. And then you walk in with green garlic, he's all over it. It's strange. So dry it on a rack with good airflow. I have some suggestions here on any of these, even the hard necks. You can just simply tie them over and hang them over a dowel. Tie them together and hang them over a dowel. You can lay them along something like 2 sawhorses. That's what I tend to do, and I usually put a lattice down, and I kind of lay it down. And what I tend to do, and you can kind of see it in this image, is I would kind of stagger them. So if you're looking at it from above, you'll see a bulb out, a bulb in, a bulb out, a bulb in, and that just gives it a little more airflow when they're next to each other. And then every day I would flip this over so that I would have now this end up. And it's very, very simple to do. It's just a couple of weeks of doing that, And once it dries down completely like this, you can go ahead and cut the top off to about 1 inch from the top. Here's another ingenious solution. I love when people repurpose things like this. And that's it. So once you've harvested it, you can eat it. Green garlic that's fresh out of the ground is going to have all of that green, those green layers. Those are the things that become these papery wrappers down the road because they dry down. So when you eat your garlic straight out of the ground, it's like amazing. It's juicy, it's moist, it's flavorful, it's unbelievable. It's like nothing you've ever tried before. You're just gonna have to peel down a little further than you normally would because that green fleshy stuff is not dried down yet. So that you can eat it immediately. But if you want to cure it, and curing is the process by which we make sure that the plant will, the garlic will hold in long-term storage, you want to ensure that it's completely dried down like I have here. And don't get tempted. It's kind of like, you know, dead stuff around your house, on your porch, wherever you wind up drying it down. But, you know, after a while, you can cut this down once it's completely dry. And then you're just going to keep it in a cool, dry place, cool, dry, dark place, just like you would normally. Any cloves that start to sprout, you'll want to use first. They're perfectly good to use. It's got a little bit of green, doesn't mean that you can't use it. And that's pretty much it. So this is my seed library garden that we planted the garlic in last year. You can see that back bed is what the garlic sort of looks like now. It's in a raised bed, so it's looking a little taller than it normally would. But basically, that's what the garlic looks like when it's really happy, and it was super happy. And here's another image of the garlic, and in the front you can see I have the hard neck, and you could see some of those scapes that we were talking about. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and let me just make sure there's nothing else. Nope. And we'll go ahead and answer any questions that you have, and I hope you have been inspired to grow some garlic. So let's see.
Thank you so much, Regina. That was great.
Oh, you're welcome.
We do have a few questions.
Sure.
So let's start with, is the garlic the patrons received certified disease-free?
Yes, it is. So we got it from Restoration Farm. Last year when I spoke to Caroline, she said that she's thinking about starting to sell garlic. And I said, well, I wanted you to know, Caroline, I really harp on the certified disease-free. So I really, really don't know how much it costs for you to do that, but I won't be sending people to you unless you do that. And she did that. So it is certified disease-free. The variety is music, and it's a hard neck variety. So you will be looking for that garlic scape in June.
Okay, we have another question. Can you plant garlic in a large planter?
Yes, you can. They may not, what I would do is if you're going to plant it in a planter, make sure it has good depth, you know, because those roots do get very deep. Make sure it's in a somewhat sheltered spot because, of course, it's going to be colder above the ground than in the ground. You know, we have a frost line. It only goes down a certain point if it gets that cold in the winters, and it doesn't seem to be doing that anymore. But in the planter, it's being more exposed to wind. So put it in a sheltered spot. Maybe put it up against the house and then move it out once the weather has gotten milder. I'm actually going to be planting all of my garlic at the community garden where I have beautiful full sun, but in containers. I will be doing that. So I have giant buckets. I'm going to fill them up with some beautiful compost, and I'm going to plant them that way this year because of my problem with white rot.
Okay. If soil is not rich, can I use fertilizer? If yes, what kind?
I'm not a fan of fertilizer. Here's a couple of reasons why. Fertilizer is really only something that the plant can use at certain points in its growth development. In cooler temperatures, it won't really absorb that fertilizer, and it tends to be water soluble. What does that mean? That means it's going to get washed away by the rain, and it's going to go into the ground, and it's going to go into our aquifers. It's easy to find compost at these big box stores now. Home Depot has them. I think they even have organic compost now. I just noticed the other day no, that was peat moss, but yes, you can find organic compost or, you know, good compost at Home Depot, and you don't need a lot of compost. You know, compost is really an inoculation of those nutrients, of those microorganisms that help cycle nutrients. So you don't need to put like a foot of compost down, couple of inches, work it into the soil, maybe do your trench and then just sprinkle it at the bottom of the trench. And that's going to help the plant tremendously. But I would shy away from fertilizer for the fact that it's water soluble. It also causes really quick growth, which is great if you're in a commercial business and you want to get plants out fast. But that can tend to cause a problem with, it depends on the time of year you're using the fertilizer. It might be too much growth, but it tends, nice fast growth is very lush, and aphids absolutely love it. Now, I've never seen an aphid on a garlic plant, but you tend to attract insects to your garlic or to any of your plants you use fertilizer on, because they're seeking nitrogen. So, and that's where they're going to get it, by sucking it out of the leaves. And that's why aphids tend to show up on those very, very lush plants that maybe you've over-fertilized.
Can you plant a clove from the garlic that was grown in the garden the year before?
Well, you could. Now, I personally wouldn't, because I had that terrible experience where I did that, and then like every year after that I've had this problem with white mold. So remember, these things are microscopic. So if you introduced it into the soil, it may take a couple of years for it to build up in the soil, but if you keep planting the same, you keep inoculating the soil with that same microorganism that's a problem, you could wind up with a long-term problem. You know, people do. I mean, Caroline, who is from Restoration Farm, she never buys garlic. She grows enough garlic to plant new garlic. She got it tested, so she knows she doesn't have a problem. But it's short of getting it tested, you don't know what's in the soil that might be, you know, hanging out there dormant for all these years and was just waiting for your gorgeous garlic to get planted there. But, you know, if you're talking about planting in a container and you have a problem, then you know not to use that container again and put that soil somewhere where you won't be planting garlic in it again. But yeah, that's a call for you to decide. I personally, I would not do it, as I've had this problem.
Is it okay to plant near other veggies, or would you suggest separating just in case of the white rot?
No, I think it's great. I would just consider what kind of environment those vegetables are. If they're plants that you have to water a lot, I would probably think about how I'm watering, right? I wouldn't water the whole bed. If you plant half a bed of garlic and you plant half a bed of something that needs water, that's probably okay if you keep that water limited to those plants. Somebody made a very good suggestion about garlic and dahlias. They had dahlias they planted and the squirrels would come dig them up, or some critter was digging them up, and they suggested planting garlic with it because nothing likes garlic. Deer don't eat garlic. Mice don't eat garlic. Nothing. Only we eat garlic. So it might be a good thing to do if you're trying to deter something from eating your other plants. So something to consider. But just make sure that the cultural requirements are the same. If it's a plant that needs tons of water and you've got your garlic interspersed in there, not a great idea.
Okay, there was one more question. If you grow the garlic in a raised bed, not in the ground, should you do anything differently, or is it the same as in the ground?
Same exact thing. In fact, you saw that in that video, she was growing in a raised bed, and at the garden at Glen Cove, we put it in the raised bed, and it grows great in a raised bed. Raised beds are really the best thing you can put in your garden for just the fact that it drains faster. You can plant things more closely. You're not stepping on the soil to get to things. It's better for your back, and it's just warms up faster in the spring. That mass warms up faster because it's got a lot of depth and it's dark. So raised beds are great, and yes, you can definitely plant it in a raised bed. That's definitely, if you have that option, do it, definitely.
Does anyone else have any more questions?
Okay, so you guys got a handout. If you have any questions, you can check that out. Lots of videos online. Just make sure you're going with something reputable. There's a website called GrowVeg, I think .org, and he has a lot of different videos of all kinds of gardening things. I can highly recommend him. He seems to be really on it. And I hope you go grow garlic, and I hope you never stop. And
Everyone is saying thank you. They can't wait to grow garlic. It was a great
Yay!
program.
I have more converts. My goal in life, get everybody to grow their garlic. Okay.
That was great. Thank you so much, and thank you
Oh,
everyone
you're
for
so
joining.
welcome. Okay, everyone, have a great night and go
Good
grow.
night, everyone.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.